The General Data Protection Regulation is centred around a number of principles, and these can be found in Article 5 of the regulation. And these principles apply across the board to the processing of personal data. However, we see that even at the level of the principles, there are significant exemptions where you are processing data for the purposes of scientific research. So one of the key principles is that the purposes for which data is processed should be limited to those purposes for which the data was collected. So data normally has to be collected for specific purposes, and then it can't be further processed in a way which is incompatible. However, what we see is that where the data is being processed for scientific research purposes, then there's a presumption that that won't be incompatible with the initial purpose. So we already see an exemption from one of the key principles of the Act. And this is obviously about, Article 5B is obviously about reuse of personal data, but there's this presumption that reuse for scientific research purposes will not be incompatible. One of the other important principles in Article 5 is that is the idea of storage limitation. So we don't store data for longer than we need to, and it is only stored where it's necessary for the purposes of processing. Again, in the research context, we find that data may be stored for longer periods. It may be kept for periods prolonging or longer than the initial purpose if it is going to be further used for scientific or historical research purposes. So these kind of research exemptions are being drawn through the Act right from the beginning of the kind of principles of the GDPR.